Hello and thank you for joining me today for day 3 of Creep on June, hosted by Tracie Fox. If you do enjoy these videos, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. And if this is the first of my Creep on June videos you're watching, on day 1 I ran through what I came up with as a kind of theme for this Poe inspired challenge. So if you missed that video, please do go back and just see what I was chatting about and what Edgar got up to on day 1 of his holiday to England. And I do have a Creep on June playlist, which will be linked in the description box, so you can find them all in one place. And I've kind of done it as like a bit of a story, a month-long story. Now, before we do hear day 3's story, you may remember, if you did watch my first video, that when the maid she has children, they have children, and they have children, and they're learning about everything that happened when Poe came to visit, and they were so enthralled with it all that they started making up games. So before we actually hear day 3's story, we have one of the games that the maid's children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren created and played after hearing all about Edgar's visit. And this one is called Vines and Ladders. And it's a little bit like Snakes and Ladders, but more botanical. So vines and ladders, you go up the ladders, down the vines. I think in America you call it chutes and ladders. And it's called Library of the Lost. Dare you play and brave the night, where monsters lurk and ghosts take flight. Ladders rise through mist and gloom, but tangled vines may spell your doom. Roll the dice, don't lose your head, escape the board or join the... Dun, dun, dun. Dead, I'm guessing. So with this, I stuck this board down, but I left it so that it can kind of be crossed, and I'll tell you for why. Because these are all the 6 playing pieces, and what you would do, you would roll the dice, which I do not have one of, and move across the board, going up the ladders and down the vines. Now I would be the witch, obviously, and I'm winning because I'm up the ladder, but if I had come to the end here, we can just move this along, sort of. We can move this along, and I would get here, and oh no, I'd have to fall down and join Mr. Vampire guy. But because basically they are stuck here, because they are stuck on with tiny little magnets, and that's how they stay on the board. And now I've got to try and get this magnet back on, because they are very fiddly. I keep putting them the wrong way. There we go. Is that on? Is that on? Nope. Let's watch me play with this for 4 hours. Tell you what, I'll leave that there. It will get lost in the book, and then... Actually, no, it will get lost in the book. Bear with. Okay, I found it. It's here. So there we go. So then they don't fall off. Perfectly stable until you want to actually use it, and then they get in the way. So luckily I probably won't actually play this game very often. So let's go on to day 3. Far in the forest, dim and old, for her may some tall vault unfold, some vault that oft hath flung its black and winged panels fluttering back. So we're going back to the sleeper again, and we first visited that poem on day 1. And can you see? Shall I bring you up a little bit? So then chaos surrounds me. There we go. So this is a mess everywhere at the moment, just from creating. Anyway, so we first visited the poem The Sleeper on day 1, and today Poe awakes a little bit earlier today. He got about 4 hours sleep, which is actually quite a lot for him. It must be the sea air. He's keen to get out and see what's hidden in that dark forest he very nearly got to yesterday before getting distracted by that beautiful, clear and crisp river. Today, as he heads out, he sees the maid beginning her rounds. He tells her how grateful he was for the food and drink she left him. This is the first time he's really actually spoken to anyone since he got here. She tells him what a lovely exotic accent he's got. She asks him where he's from, and they spend a little bit of time talking about his homeland back in America. She finds the way he speaks very poetic sounding, and he has a certain charm about him despite looking quite dishevelled. He's clearly an eccentric man, young but with eyes that have seen a lot of trauma and heartache. They conclude their short chat and Edgar heads out into the dreary day, still cloudy but not too windy today, although there is a slight drizzle, not enough to get particularly wet by, so he doesn't worry about the rain and he starts his now a little bit more familiar walk. Heading down the beach, reaching the bridge at the river, and now for the first time crossing over the bridge and heading into the forest. Even though it's daylight and still only morning, the forest is a lot dimmer. The further he goes into it, the darker it becomes. The old twisted tree trunks surround him, and as he looks up, their great tops act as a canopy, blocking out most of the natural light, and also, thankfully, the rain that has started a little bit heavier now. It is autumn, and the leaves are starting to turn beautiful shades of orange and brown, with fading greens. There's already a blanket of leaves on the ground, but still so many attached to the trees. It's like that middle in time where the trees are trying to rest, but they still contain so much energy within them, so that they're not quite ready to sleep. Edgar looks around at his surroundings and thinks that it seems that everything he does here or sees here just reminds him of all of the women he once knew, so many of them no longer with him in life. He sees some magpies flapping about in one of the trees, and he briefly remembers that wing of a bird he saw last night after it tapped on his window. He walks into the woods a little bit further until he finds a dry area under a giant oak tree that he sits and ponders at for a while. He sees hundreds of acorns lying around him on the forest floor with their little hats on. He wonders what the little fairies look like with their acorn hats on. Words and phrases start circling around in his head. His imagination starts going wild about what else could be lurking in these woods. This would be an ideal place for a vault where someone could be laid to rest, their ghost forever able to be free to wander within these trees, their corpse undisturbed for eternity. The wind starts to pick up and he can hear it whistling through the trees, and the rustling is unsettling. He wonders if there are monsters within this forest, or if it's just the ghosts and the fairies. He decides that's enough sitting in a forest for one day. He's suitably scared himself, which is exactly how he likes to feel when he writes his stories. So he heads home, although he must have ventured a bit further into the woods than he thought and hadn't paid much attention to how he got in, so it took him a good couple of hours to get back out again. So once again, by the time he found the exit and the familiar bridge, the skies were getting darker and he had to hurry back before the tide came in. Plus the rain was picking up and he started to feel damp through his clothes. That's 2 days in a row now I've come home with wet feet, he thinks, and now wet legs too. But upon entering his room and lighting his candle, he sees again that the lovely maid has left him some tea and whiskey and bread, butter, and that delicious jam. He wonders if she makes it herself. He'll ask her when he next sees her. Or is that being overly friendly? You'll see. He changes out of his damp clothes and eats and drinks whilst his skin dries out, and then sits at his desk, tapping away on his typewriter, writing more of his poem that he did decide to actually name The Sleeper, scowling when the words don't sound quite right, scratching whole sentences out and throwing the papers on the floor around him. Then he hears that tapping again, looks to the window. It's a crow, just standing there. The crow lets out one single caw. Edgar jokingly asks him if he knows any other words. The crow tilts his head and says, caw, again. Edgar realises he doesn't actually know if it's a crow or a raven. He knows there is a difference, but can't remember what it is right now. Something to do with their feet or their necks. Although raven sounds a lot more romantic than crow. Crow sounds like how you would describe an old witch woman. Maybe this is an old witch woman transformed into a crow, sent here to irritate him. He laughs at the suggestion and is pleased his wild imagination is starting to return. He absent-mindedly doodles some monstrous characters while he waits for words to return to his fingertips. He remembers the books he stacked up in the corner and realised that he hadn't even noticed that this room contains a bookcase. So self-involved he's been and not really paid attention to the rest of the room. He thinks that maybe tomorrow he will stay and read some. The bookcase is filled with loads of literature, and that will save him having wet feet again. Perhaps the maid will dry his clothes for him if he asks nicely. So that's day 3. So these are some of the sketches that he made, and this is him standing over by the river before he heads over into the forest. This is the raven that he saw, or the crow that he saw on the windowsill. And it says, quoth the raven, sleep. Of course, we know what the raven eventually ends up saying. This is the forest that he heads into. All the trees acting like a canopy with some lace along the side and some other bits. And this is an envelope, and in here, another quote from Poe that says, the scariest monsters are the ones that lurk within our souls. And the words are from Release the Crafting, and so is this little page. And then on the back is just some writing space, and he's spilt some of his tea. And then this is just showing his cogs whirring in his head. And that just pops in here. And then we've got the quote here, far in the forest dim and old, for her may some tall vault unfold, some vault that oft hath flung back, and winged panels fluttering back. And this is the vault that he was imagining in the forest, and this is just an old witch lady that he was imagining when he talked about the crow transforming. And there's just a black cat, because we know that Edgar enjoyed a black cat. Also, is this the crow lady? Or is this the crow lady? He doesn't know. But he likes to sketch some bits and pieces. And here's just a bit of the sleeper as well in the background. And that just pops in as a pocket there. And that goes there. So join me tomorrow for day 4. We'll cover that up. And I hope you enjoyed today's chapter of Edgar's story and what I've made. If you do, like I say, please do like and subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the bell so you can be notified of my next episode. And I would really love it if you would leave me a comment with your thoughts. I've left the playlist for both my Creep on June videos and also what I did for Povember, if you wanted to see those and also hear me recite some of the poetry that Priscilla chose for Povember, that also has been used for Creep on June as well. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow for day 4. Have a lovely rest of your day and see you then.